Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Welcome to today's program entitled Stakeholder Influence and Board Reporting. I am your presenter, Andrew Ondari. We pride ourselves as strategic partners in our organizations. And as strategic partners, we participate in strategy formulation and implementation. In this partnership, we work with others, such as chief executives and the board, in order to achieve organizational objectives and strategies. By working with these partners, we create synergy, which helps us to achieve more or better results than when we are working alone. And these partners are the stakeholders who have an interest in our organizations, particularly in the work that we do as HR managers, and also what we bring on board in line with the strategic objectives. These stakeholders can have an influence on the decisions that we make. Decisions such as succession planning, 2, recruitment and selection, especially of top managers, 3, training and development, as well as compensation and reward management. About the board, these are top organs of an organization whose approvals we need when we engage in those strategies, such as recruitment and selection, training and development, performance management, as well as compensation. On several occasions, we may be required to make presentations to the boards. One, for purposes of creating awareness among the board members of what we are doing as HR. And then secondly, getting approval for HR initiatives that we engage in from time to time. And again, those HR initiatives require financial support. And at the board level, we try to persuade them using data for them to approve our initiatives and allocate financial resources. To make us understand what stakeholder influence is and board reporting are all about, I want us to look at the key areas that we are going to cover this morning. And these key areas are: 1, data storytelling. That as HR managers, we can present convincing stories to the boards using data. And as I will demonstrate, storytelling is about making a narrative about HR initiatives how they are implemented, the outcomes, outputs, and impact, as well as the support that we require for us to implement them. So supporting our story or our narrative requires data. Secondly, we will be looking at board reporting techniques. I have just indicated that we may be called upon to make presentations. And these presentations are in the form of reports. And I will demonstrate the types of reports that we present to the boards. So as we present those reports, we must equip ourselves with certain techniques for purposes of, one, presenting our data clearly, two, convincing the board to support our initiatives, and also obtaining their buy-in in the activities that we engage in. Thirdly, we shall be looking at strategic execution planning. As strategic partners, we have a responsibility of creating initiatives that are aligned with corporate strategies. And those initiatives must be implemented. So strategy execution means implementing HR strategies which are derived from the corporate strategies. And in this case, we shall be looking at the corporate objectives which must be identified, and then preparing implementation plans up to the monitoring section, that we need to continuously monitor the progress of the strategies that have been implemented. One, to identify any emerging issues. Two, to identify gaps. And three, to develop remedial actions to continuously improve. So at the end of any strategic plan is continuous improvement, which is a product of monitoring and evaluation. And then lastly, we shall go through the motions of preparing for board presentation in the form of a simulation. That in simulations, we put ourselves in a mock environment which may reflect a real situation in board presentation. This will help us to prepare for the actual presentations that we make to the boards. Without this simulation, there is a possibility of us making errors or not articulating our issues clearly. So by simulation, we put ourselves in a real situation, and we make presentations either to our fellow HR officers or to the executives, so that we make informative and convincing presentation to the board that will yield better results than when we are not prepared. So on that note, I want us to start with the first heading, that is data storytelling. We have a story to tell as HR managers, and there is nobody who can tell our story better than ourselves. That story revolves around human resource initiatives which are supported by data. So in this storytelling, we are going to narrate to the boards aspects to do with the recruitment, training, performance management, employee relations, as well as compensation and reward management. That unless we equip ourselves with the data, it can be very difficult to convince our boards to support those HR initiatives. And as I will demonstrate, there are very many sources of data which are available to us, which we can use to create our story. And in this storytelling, we should be structured in a way that creates logic, creates flow, and is convincing. So by way of introduction, what is data storytelling? That this is basically explanation of HR findings using narratives. Narratives like the one that maybe all of us may have read about in our literature classes. Is what you call oral narratives, a story. A narrative is basically a story that has a beginning and has an end. So the beginning of our story is the data that we have collected within and outside the organization, which we have to tell to the board. And in this narrative, we also use visuals. Visuals such as pie charts, bar graphs, or histograms are summaries which help the boards to understand what is going on in the HR function. And this story must be told in the best way so that we come out not as operatives, but as strategic partners who contribute to the attainment of corporate strategies. And as I will demonstrate, under performance, that the HR function must perform its work well so that we contribute to the revenues of the organization, to customer satisfaction, and to attainment of a larger market share so that we become competitive. Secondly, what's the purpose of storytelling? We simplify complex data which might not be clearly understood by the board members. And this is on the understanding that boards are busy institutions who may not require a lot of information. So in our storytelling, we simplify the data in summary form, but without losing the objective of our presentation. Then what is the value of storytelling? It is basically to create understanding that the board knows what is going on in the HR department when we are called upon, sorry, when we are called upon to make presentations. And not only understanding of the HR department, but also enterprise performance. What are the indicators of enterprise performance? Number one, revenue. Number two, profits, especially for private sector organizations. Number three, customer satisfaction. And number four, market share. And therefore, as HR managers, we use this data to demonstrate how we have contributed to revenue generation, to profit making, to customer satisfaction, and to market share. And that is why we sit at those high levels to contribute to strategy formulation and implementation so that we can get value for our money, on the understanding that HR involve investments. Who is the audience in data storytelling? It is basically the board, because our topic is stakeholder influence and board reporting. So our audience is the board. And in our presentation or in our narration, we tailor make messages according to the board interests, priorities, and expectations. In terms of interest, the board is interested in two main things. One, financial interest. Two, strategic interest. That through our initiatives in HR, we are able to generate money for the organization, and that is financial, in which the board is interested. And secondly, as HR managers, we contribute to the attainment of strategies, which is another interest of the board. And once the interests of the board are catered for, then we are likely to obtain support and get the ear of the board members when we require them. And then on priorities, these are areas that are likely to get more impact to the organization. So they prioritize aspects that will create the greatest impact or are likely to bring better outcomes and better outcomes. So we prioritize those areas without forgetting risks involved, because risk can also be a priority. That as HR managers in our presentations, and I will demonstrate this in a short while, we are concerned with the risks. Those threats that can bring the organization to a stop or are likely to affect our market share or could lead to the collapse of the organization, we should prioritize them. So when we make this presentation in the form of a story, we tailor make messages focusing on the priorities of the board. And then what are the expectations of the board? That one, the enterprise is running without hitches. Two, that the enterprise is meeting or is achieving its mandate. So the board members expect that we work towards the mandate of the organization, which in simple terms means the mission. What is it that you do, or why are you in business? That is your mandate. Then lastly, storytelling helps to improve decision making. How? Because it is data-based. And as they say, maths or figures don't lie as long as they are accurately collected and analyzed. So figures don't lie. By collecting, analyzing, and presenting data, we are proposing to the board that they can make decisions based on the data that we are presented. So even at the individual level as HR managers, we make decisions based on evidence. And this evidence is data that has been collected through various means, either through surveys or through audits, so that as we move forward, we make decisions that are evidence-based. So basically, that is our introduction to data storytelling. Next is the sources of this data. Where do we get this data from, which we can use in board presentation or reporting? Number one is human resource information systems. And many of us have these systems in place through which we collect data. So anybody who wants data about employees, for example, the profile of employees, their performance, their compensation and benefits, disciplinary issues, they can get this information from this system. And as HR managers, when we make presentations to the board, we have this system in place and we get data from it, summarize it, and then present to the board. I've also mentioned other data like headcount. These are the in-post, the number of people who are currently working in the organization. What is the total? That is the current supply of employees. Attrition has to do with exits of employees from the organization, either through voluntary resignation or through retirement or layoff. There is also involuntary attrition, which is disciplinary or dismissal. We can also obtain data from engagement surveys. We usually conduct this for purposes of obtaining information about the level of satisfaction of our internal customers, who are the employees and the managers. Why do we talk about engagement? It is because that an engaged employee is likely to be productive as compared to a disengaged one who is likely to be dissatisfied and therefore unproductive and has the possibility of exiting the organization, which we work toward avoiding. So you can conduct engagement surveys to establish the levels of satisfaction with the various aspects in the organization. So what are the aspects that our employees can be satisfied with? One is working conditions and environment. Two, their levels of compensation and benefits. Three, the leadership of the organization. Four, the culture. And 5, the policies, processes, systems, and procedures. So we can establish the level of satisfaction through engagement surveys. And the intention here is to address any issues that may cause dissatisfaction. Number 3 is performance records. We conduct performance appraisals either quarterly, biannually, or annually, depending on our policies. These records can be extracted for purposes of making presentations or reporting to the board. That in case we are called upon by the board to demonstrate to them that the organization is on track, we get this data from those performance records showing productivity, achievements, and trends in appraisal across teams. And by across teams, we mean teams within the HR department, teams within finance, teams within marketing, teams within corporate affairs, and others. So we are not limiting performance records to HR department only. Because when we conduct performance appraisals, it is across the whole organization. Then we have recruitment analytics. We hire people on a regular basis depending on our needs. And again, we go back to our systems, which could be HRIS, and get data from there, which we can conduct analytics on so that we can get the data to present to the board. And this data relates to cost per hire. That's the amount of money spent on hiring one employee. And how do you do this? There is a formula that you use, that's the total cost of hire. You divide that by the total number of employees hired. You multiply that by 100, you get the percentage. But if it's just the cost, you will get the amount of money spent. Time to fill, you look at how much time was taken from the time a vacant position was identified to the last phase of onboarding. How much time did you take? And again, I'm sure in our organizations, we have standards on the time we take to fill vacant positions. This could be 45 days, 60 days, or 90 days. So that when you do these analytics, you know whether you are on track or you have a deviation. And on candidate quality metrics, we are looking at the quality of our candidates. And quality candidates are those who perform the work for which they were hired. 2, who integrate to the team in the organization. And 3, those who produce the results that are required, production of results. And how do we get these metrics? We can again conduct a survey to determine how much time we take, how much we spend, and the quality of candidates. Learning dashboards. I want to believe that some of our organizations have systems such as LMS. And within this LMS is learning management systems. And in these systems, there could be embedded dashboards, which may show one or a combination of the following. 1, the completion rate of trainings. 2, the cost of training. 3, the benefits derived from training. So that when we conduct ROI, which is a return on investment, we look at the total benefits that the employees bring to the organization after training. And you divide that by the cost of training, you will get the total benefits. And that is ROI. Then finally, we have financial systems which are domiciled in the finance department. We can get information about finances related to workforce costs. Workforce costs. It has been argued for a long time that the HR department is a cost center. But again, as HR has evolved over time, we are not a cost center. We can also be said to be a revenue center. So what are the costs associated with HR? 1, recruitment costs. 2, training costs. 3, compensation and benefits, among others. So when we calculate this cost, we derive that data from our financial systems, or if not, from our budgets. We usually prepare budgets as HR managers, which are consolidated with other budgets through the finance department, and that can be computed to look at the total cost of running the organization. What are the components of effective data storytelling? 1 is data accuracy, that this data must be factual. If it's not factual, then it is not accurate. And again, we do not want to present rumors to the boards because our data is inaccurate. It will be very embarrassing if a board member points out that the facts that you are presented are incorrect. So as we make these stories to the board, we must equip ourselves with all relevant facts which are correct and can be verified. Without verification, it becomes very difficult and you are likely to be biased or to be bashed by the board, and you know the consequences of not aligning yourself with the board requirements and priorities. Secondly is the narrative flow, that the storytelling must be logically presented, consisting of several key aspects. 1, the introduction. 2, the findings. 3, the conclusions. 4, recommendations. And 5, the action plans. You can make recommendations, and at the end of it, you demonstrate an action plan for implementing the recommendations. Then the other component is visualization, which I indicated earlier is the use of charts, infographics, dashboards, pie charts, and others. That in the majority of cases, the board members understand visuals better than stories. Visuals. Because 1, they are a summary of data. Summary. Why summary? Because the board does not have all the time to look at detailed information in the form of paragraphs. They are time consuming. 2, visuals help boards to understand better and also relate your story with the results. That if your story about recruitment, you have looked at the time taken for hiring the cost, and you can demonstrate it in a diagram, and that should be related to an outcome, to an output, or even to an impact. So if you are presenting data on recruitment and you want to demonstrate that there is value from recruitment, you will demonstrate that there is cost optimization of this process. And the board members will be happy with you because that is an outcome. Cost optimization. Then relevance is about addressing an objective or an organizational requirement. So in your storytelling, please focus on critical metrics related to your business as HR. Critical. Why critical? These are aspects or initiatives which bring the greatest value to the organization. So the focus should be on those critical aspects, such as cost of hire, so that the board members know that the finances of the organization are being used optimally. Or if it is reward, you are asked how much are we spending on the benefits of the employees vis-a-vis the total budget of the organization, you are able to demonstrate that. Or if it comes to the total staffing costs, you should be able to make a presentation, convince the board that the business is on track. Why? Because by compensating employees, we expect that they work and produce returns in the form of revenues. Emotion, we are all emotional, and I don't expect us to be emotional in our presentations. What I'm saying is that we should inject a human element in our stories, a story that is relatable, that the board can relate to what you are saying, that the numbers speak for themselves. And as humans, we can relate to those stories. And therefore, it's expected that as you make your presentation, you should be passionate. Otherwise, if you present it casually, they will also treat you casually. Then lastly is clarity. Clarity is an element of communication which helps people to understand your presentation, especially the language that you use. If the language is complicated, then it becomes jargon. And that is a risk in communication because you lose your audience. By avoiding jargon, you make the storytelling easier and simpler. And that is how you can successfully make your story understandable. So clarity in terms of language, please avoid those. If you are a lawyer, avoid legalese language because most board members may not be trained lawyers. In a board, you may have a lawyer, yes, but not everybody understands that. Or when it comes to HR, the board members may not be conversant with HR. Some are auditors, some are finance experts. And therefore, using that jargon in HR might confuse them. So clarity is important, and where they don't seem to understand what you are saying, please simplify. Before we take us a break, let us look at common mistakes that we make or may make in data storytelling. One is data overload, and again, this is an element of communication. Storytelling is a communication element. When there is information overload, it means there is too much information that is presented within a short time and that may not be deciphered by the audience. And therefore, we are urged that as we make our presentations, we summarize key points that can be presented to the board. Information overload. And as you may have already realized, even in my presentation, I do not exceed 6 points. I don't. I know there's a lot that can be said about a topic, but I try to restrict myself to either 5 or 6 for purposes of understanding. But again, if I heap a lot of information, for example, mistakes, there are 1,000 mistakes that we can make, and that can take about 5, 6 slides. So for purposes of this presentation and your presentation to the board, you are advised that you summarize. Secondly, another mistake is no context. That whatever we do is contextualized within the business environment. So when you talk about recruitment, give us the context. Training, the context. Performance management, the context. That everything that we do is done within the context of 1, the mission, 2, the vision, 3, strategic objectives. Otherwise, if you do not contextualize this, then you become weaker. And the board may not entertain weak presentations. Going back to the board another time, making the same presentation is not only time wasting, but also tedious, because the board may not always be available for you to make your presentation a second or third time. We must get it right from the beginning, contextualize our presentations so that we do not deviate from the priorities and interests of the board. Poor data quality, which is outdated, incomplete, and inaccurate, we should avoid that. And that can only be done when you design your data collection tool, you pilot it so that you get accurate data. And if you are doing analytics, if you are not familiar with analysis, please look for an expert who can do the analytics for you. And in terms of currency of information, how current is it or updated? Ensure that the information you collect is current. The one that is existing right now. Or if it's a business environment, ensure that you are current in your business analysis. Poor design of the visuals. Yes, we present our data using visuals, and the visuals are pie charts, bar charts, histograms, line graphs. If they are not properly presented, they are, for example, not clear. Somebody cannot see them clearly. They are struggling. Then you'll be asked a lot of questions. What do you mean? Or what is on top of your diagram there? We can't see it. So clarity is important because it not only saves the time of the presenter, but also the time of the board. Lack of flow, I said that a good narrative is one that has an introduction, a body, a conclusion, and a recommendation. They should all be connected. Introduction is connected to the body of the findings. The findings are connected to recommendations, and the recommendations are connected to action plans. Then lastly, ignoring the interests of the board or the audience. I said very clearly the board has interests such as financial and strategic, and therefore your storytelling should be addressing those concerns. Without this, you weaken your data and the level of trust that the board may have in you. Then how do we improve storytelling? One, you simplify your reports, just like we have said. Use simple language. Don't be complicated. Two, accurate information. Ensure that the information you present, this is to address the quality of data. If you look at bullet 3, poor data quality. So in this bullet, that is accurate information, ensure that your data is of high quality. It is relevant, it is accurate, and it is up to date. Relevant metrics, again, we use KPIs in most of the things that we do as HR managers. These KPIs are related to recruitment, to training, to performance. These are indicators that will tell us whether we are achieving our objectives or not. That at the end of a period, when we assess our performance, the KPIs will speak for us. Then visual consistency. You should use standardized charts for data that is asking for discrete data. For example, discrete data, you can use bar charts or pie charts. Discrete data means data that is not continuous. But if it's continuous data, you may use histograms or line graphs. So for continuous data, please be consistent, use line graphs and histograms. For discrete data, use pie charts and bar charts. And that will make it easier for you to present, identify trends, especially in continuous data. You want to identify trends. Continuous data can be presented using line graphs and histograms. And lastly, board engagement. Engagement is looked at in two ways. I said employee engagement is the commitment. And in this case, when you talk about board engagement, you can create commitment of the board to the initiatives of HR, but more so encourage discussion, because engagement has to do with participation, involvement, and consultation. So discussions revolve around the data that you are presenting. Don't just present without asking for input, for comments, or for opinions or insights from the board. In that way, your storytelling will be interactive. And as a way of making this story that I'm presenting more interactive, I now want to invite us to make our comments, ask questions, or share our experiences so that we move on to the next part. The floor is ours. Please ask your question, make a comment, or share an experience. Anybody to go first? Kuria Magiri, if you can go first, please. The floor is yours. Rosalind Mwema, if you are there, please make your comment or ask a question. Caroline, I'm not doing it any particular order, but it's random.
Sorry, Mr. Ondari.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, so good morning.
Good morning to you.
A very insightful topic.
Yes.
I'm glad that I joined.
Thank you.
Yeah, my name is CHRP Magire Kuria.
Pleasure.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh-huh.
I'm really excited to go through this topic because lately I've been told to be reporting to the board
Yes.
as the HR in the organization.
Uh-huh.
We usually have the
Sorry, you are breaking.
for the
Magiri,
do
I've
I have
lost
to do
you.
all this? You know,
Uh,
I'm saying, can you
uh-huh.
hear me?
Yes, I can hear
Yeah,
you
I'm
now.
saying
Please
I
go ahead.
usually, yeah, we usually have the template, which I found working.
Mm-hmm.
The person who was there before, they have been issued with the template because actually organization, yeah, they usually provide the templates. So I can relate with it
Yes.
and whatever you're telling me. I usually have the 3 metrics, the performance, the recruitment,
Yes. Uh-huh.
separation, and the performance
Uh-huh.
and the training. So every time I usually
Yes.
just fill in the data for the quarter, so I can see what
Yes.
I have I've been I've been told by the CEO that I'm too detailed. Sometimes he says, you're too detailed, please remove that data and just include numbers, you know.
Uh-huh.
So I'm happy that I am learning, and
Yes.
I am going to be the best once it comes to board reporting.
Thank you, Magiri, for
Thank you.
sharing your story. Yes, I'm happy that you want to be the best, and at ACHRP, we empower people to be the best that they can ever be. Thank you. Anybody else with a question or a comment? Yes, go ahead, Kagiri. Magiri, sorry.
Oh, no, I just wanted to add that this board reporting, I also have been doing the board papers,
Yes.
and the same way you've told us that we need to just give the relevant information to the board, so it should not go more than a page.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so and I'm so detailed because I usually think, you know, the HRs, we are people of
You are
policies and
storytellers.
procedures. So you write a lot of things, then you're told they can't read this. So please.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, we are storytellers, but you do not know now what to do to the board. The rest you can give the stories, the long
Yes.
stories, but the board, specifically, we need to be very simple. Thank you.
Yes. Asante sana. As a point of emphasis, those of us who make presentations to the board, please ensure you summarize your presentation in what you call executive summary. In that way, you will catch the attention of the board. Two, you will save their time. And three, you will get their support very easily. Thank you. Anybody else before we move? Tracy, if you are there.
Yes, I am Mwalimu.
Yes. Anything else? Go ahead.
Personally, I'm just here to learn because soon I'll be assuming the role of reporting to managers and board members. So it is really enlightening on the fact that keep it as short as possible. As Magiri has said, HRs, we like to over-explain things.
Yes.
So I hope this will be a very good tool for me in the near future.
Yes, it should. And I believe we are now related. And as soon as we become HR directors or those who are already directors, it will make your work very easy, very interesting, and the outcomes will be very good for you. So without any other question from anybody, I now propose that we move to the next part, and that is the reporting techniques. These techniques could relate to the methods that we use to make presentations. And these techniques must be, one, clear in terms of content. Two, allow us or enable us to make a convincing case to the board. And three, maintain relevance and accuracy in our reporting. So board reporting basically involves preparing reports around or communicating, because reporting is basically sharing or communicating, sharing or communicating information to the board. And this report may relate to initiatives that you have already undertaken, which require the attention of the board. Initiatives you have undertaken that require the attention of the board or may require their support. So we report on many things in HR, which I will demonstrate next. So what is this? Structured communication. Board reporting is structured communication. And the communication involves sharing of information. Sharing of information. And not just any information. Relevant, accurate, and up-to-date information. So that is our basic definition of board reporting. What is the objective of this reporting? Is to allow the board to make informed decisions. By informed, we mean data-based. By informed, we mean unbiased. By informed, we mean accurate. So that there is no guesswork in between. And that you as an HR expert, you are able to defend your position because you have data to support your report. And the other objective is strategic oversight. The board oversights the whole organization, starting with the CEO or the MD. The MD is responsible for the day-to-day operations of the organization and therefore is answerable to the board. And you as a HR expert, you may be asked by the CEO to accompany him or her to the board because there are certain information or data that the board may be requiring. So that strategic oversight relates to 3 or 4 things. 1, attainment of the mandate. 2, attainment of the vision of the organization. 3, adherence to the core values. And lastly, attainment of corporate strategies. And I think that is what the board could be interested in when they listen to us during those presentations. Strategic oversight. And therefore, our reports should support the board to oversight that everything is going according to the mission, vision, objectives, and the corporate strategy. What are the areas covered in reporting, especially from a HR perspective? 1 is recruitment. So what do you report? You report numbers. Training and development, you report numbers. Performance management, you report numbers. And employee exits and retention, you report numbers. Retention especially. So the board could be interested in these numbers related to HR initiatives, such as recruitment, training, performance, compensation, and retention. Because this is our daily bread as HR experts, we should be on top of our game by demonstrating the value that the organization obtains or derives from these initiatives. And then the other aspect related to reporting is stakeholder influence. Remember, our topic is stakeholder influence and board reporting. The stakeholders are many. Internally, we have the HR staff. 2, we have the supervisors in all departments. 3, we have managers in all departments. 4, we have directors, depending on your structure, in all departments. So these are our internal stakeholders. And in preparing this report, we work in partnership with these stakeholders because they can influence decisions. So in terms of reporting, we strengthen the accountability of the stakeholders and then confidence that when we make good presentations, the stakeholders are very happy with us and therefore can trust us to do the right things. And then lastly is communication style. All of us have our communication styles, even by the way we speak. If you speak in a room and I don't even see you, I should be able to know who you are. I say, that is Andrew speaking from the next room, even without seeing me. Those of us who have read literature, allow me to use that example. We know the language that we use. If you read Achebe, you know the language. You read Ngugi wa Thiong'o, you know the language. You read Okot Bitek, you know the language. So communication style is important in terms of presentation. 1, be concise. Don't beat about the bush. And Magiri mentioned that through our experience, the board is not interested in those long narratives. Be specific. Be accurate. Don't present data with errors or falsified data, which means that you went somewhere, cooked data, and then present it. It should be accurate. Remember, this data is going to be used by the board. If you present inaccurate data, that is likely to boomerang on you in a short while. And then we should be professionally organized. From our experience and my experience, HR managers are organized people. And in our organization, we present data or reports in a logical and structured manner so that people can follow this, so that people can follow the story, so that people can understand the logic. With that flow, we are able to bring our case out in a convincing way, and that will enable us to create trust among our stakeholders, particularly the board. What are the type of board reports? And these are the ones that we present as HR managers. 1 is HR objectives. Through employment, recruitment, through training, through others. What are our priorities in line with the strategic plans? Workforce priorities. And in prioritization, you look at areas that are likely to bring the greatest value or are likely to affect the organization negatively. So you prioritize. Even in risk management, like I will mention on bullet 4, we prioritize objectives. If it is cost cutting as a corporate objective, what do we prioritize as HR? We can prioritize wastage of resources so that we can cut cost. In some organizations, we assess initiatives that bring value, and those that don't, you eliminate them. Or if you don't eliminate them, you freeze them, that resources allowing, you can always activate them. Secondly is employee performance, where we are presenting productivity, attendance, appraisal, among others, so that we demonstrate to the board that without this HR component, the organization cannot achieve its mandate. So productivity levels at the individual, group, departmental levels can be presented. Attendance is an operational issue, but if it helps, you can make a presentation. Why attendance? Because we expect all employees to come to work on a daily basis. If they don't come for any reason, it affects their performance in terms of target attainment. There are people who may not attend because of medical and other valid reasons. But those who do not have those reasons, they are said to be absent. And absenteeism can affect the performance of an organization. Some employees may be overworked doing the work of those who are absent, and can also lead to a negative image or even protests. That's why as HR managers, we need to ensure that everybody attends their work or comes to the organization as expected. Appraisal information, this is data collected on the performance of the employees, and that can form part of the board report. Recruitment, I've also mentioned this. Staffing levels, that's the number of people we have in our records. Hiring progress, where are we in terms of hiring, depending on our strategic plan? Because our strategy may indicate expansion by way of opening new branches. So when you present your report to the board, you will indicate that we have hired 100 people in line with the strategic plan, and therefore we are making progress. So if you do a quarterly report, you say in quarter one, we have hired 20 people. In quarter two, we expect to hire many more people. And by the end of that period, that is the strategic planning period, you should be able to achieve 100% number of employees hired. Risk management, this is very critical. We cannot do without this. Almost every initiative in HR has a risk. For example, recruitment has a risk. Which risk? Hiring the wrong person. Training, what is the risk? Employees leaving after training. Rather reward and compensation, what is the risk? Paying people more than they deserve. So those risks exist. So when we do risk assessment, we are looking at three key things. One, what are the sources of the risks? Two, what is the severity of the risks? Three, what is the impact of the risk? So that as you make your presentation to the board, you are well aware of the risks that you are likely to face. And in terms of risk prioritization, you look at one, the likelihood of the risk happening. Two, the impact of the risk. So that when you develop a risk heat map, You are looking at the likelihood and impact. And when you score these risks, you'll see where you can prioritize. Those risks that are very likely and have the highest impact, you can prioritize them. And then lastly is performance indicators. And I said as an organization, our indicators on performance is revenue. 2 is profits, if you are a profit-making organization. 3 is market share. And 4 is customer satisfaction. These are metrics that you can use to show how well we are doing as an organization. Next is communication skills. Communication is the lifeblood of an organization. Why the lifeblood? Because without it, an organization collapses. Because like oxygen in blood, blood carries oxygen. So that blood circulation in your body provides the body with oxygen. You deprive the body of that oxygen, you die. The same way with the organization, that's why we say the lifeblood. Communication keeps the organization oxygenated. We get energy from oxygen. We get to function from oxygen. So communication is the oxygen that we use to share information, especially with the board. What are the communication skills? Confidence. I know some of us may have stage frights where you fear or you develop anxiety when you are presenting. And if you are using papers, the papers in your hands are shaking. That can only indicate that you are not sure of what you are presenting. And in some cases, the board members will tell you, take your time, relax, and then present when you are ready. You don't want to appear like you don't have knowledge of what you are saying or you are not sure. And that is why at the end of this training, we are going to look at simulation. That as one of the ways of building confidence, you simulate the presentation exercise. So with confidence, you are able to respond to questions that may be floated by the board members. Secondly, clarity, speak with clarity. But again, some of us may have inborn challenges like stammering. Please don't panic. Even if you stammer, take your time. And in some cases, those people who stammer are the best. They have all the content. What the audience needs to do is to be patient with them. So if you are a stammerer, the audience will always understand you. But in terms of language, please present your report in a language that can be understood by the diverse board members. Diverse, which means that you need to use standard English. And if you are a Kiswahili speaking nation, you use standard Kiswahili. Active listening, again, very important skill, that you pay attention to what the board members are saying. Without paying attention, then you are likely to miss a point, probably a recommendation, or it could be an area of improvement. If you don't listen, then you miss that out. That is the more reason you need to pay attention. Another way of active listening is asking questions so that you demonstrate that you understand their concerns. Ask questions or ask for clarification. That will demonstrate that you have been listening. And again, let me emphasize that presenting reports to the board is not a one-way traffic. It is two-way, and that's why I said earlier you need to engage your board members so that they participate. And when they are making their points, this is where listening comes in. So listening, please listen. Persuasion, you cannot persuade people without data, especially at that level. And Magiri confirmed this, that for you to make a convincing case to the board, you need to equip yourself with accurate, up-to-date data. Sorry. And that is, sorry, evidence-based. Sorry. Give me a second. Sorry for that. So you need to persuade our audience, that is the board, by using facts. And these facts are derived from our findings. And these findings are based on data. So we present data so that we can persuade our audience. Then lastly, professionalism as a requirement. As a requirement, we need to present our reports professionally. And the professionals respect each other. Two, they are accountable for their own actions. And three, they present accurate data or information. We should not change figures. We should not present false information. And when we do that, we move into the area of unprofessionalism. As we move to the next part, let us now look at common mistakes we make in reporting. And I'm not saying that all of us have made these mistakes, no, but I'm saying that some of us may have made these mistakes, and by looking at them, we will be able to make our next reports more effective, more efficient. Information overload. And again, going by the example of Magiri, the boards don't require these lengthy reports. Be precise, be to the point, without losing accuracy, without losing relevance. Delayed reports. I've had and I've attended board meetings before, and you ask for a report. Somebody has gone for a training and the board is meeting, or somebody has gone abroad. This is particularly the CEO who is meant to report. But as HR managers, because you are on the ground on a day-to-day basis, when the board sits, you may be summoned to make that report. Late submissions, meaning that late approvals and even late implementation of those reports. Poor data presentation, that is where the visuals come in. I said that the visuals must be clear. They must be relevant to the data being presented. So those poor data presentations affect your presentation, and therefore you are asked to be clear in the use of these visuals. Incorrect HR data, and again, this speaks to the quality of your database. Inaccurate data. If you are using a HR information system, the data you have there must be accurate. And for you to ensure accuracy, please be auditing your data so that you have only relevant, accurate data that you have in your data banks. Lastly is weak recommendations, that at the end of your report, you may want to make a recommendation as a way forward. These recommendations must be based on hard data and must be addressing two key things. One, a problem that has to be solved, or two, an opportunity that we can take advantage of. A problem and an opportunity. So as you make your report, if it is recruitment and selection, there could be a problem related to recruitment and selection, so that you support that with data. You want to undertake training and you have been experiencing problems, or there is an opportunity for you to enhance the skills of your employees, especially now we are talking about AI. That's an opportunity for us to train. That the way forward for our staff is AI. And I will invite you to join us in AI training. That is AI for HR professionals. Please be checking out on our website, which is achrp.org. We have a calendar of events, and AI is one of them, which we can take advantage of as an opportunity. And the question we should be asking ourselves is, how relevant will we be as HR in the AI space? And therefore, a recommendation on the need for AI. The world is moving towards AI, and we should not be left behind. So weak recommendations affect your presentation, and that's a mistake that we make. Please make your recommendations very strong, very convincing, so that one, the board can approve it, two, the board can invest in it by way of allocating resources. Before we take another break, let us look at the effective reporting techniques. And again, given the example by Magiri, executive summaries are required. Please summarize your data and make your case in a convincing way. Two, you can adopt the use of dashboards. A dashboard is a digital tool to which or into which we can put data, and it analyzes this data in real time. For example, you have just hired an employee and has gone through the onboarding process. The dashboard will show that the employee has been onboarded, the start and end dates shown there, and it shows even the level of satisfaction with the onboarding process. It is in real time. So when you use these dashboards, they can be an appropriate tool when you are making board presentations. Comparative reporting, and this will arise out of benchmarking. You compare what is happening in your organization against other organizations in the industry, so that one, you are talking from an industry sorry, you are talking from an industry knowledge, and two, that you want to remain competitive in the industry. But internally, you can always benchmark with other departments, that nothing stops other departments from doing better than others. It depends on the leadership in each of the departments. So you can do comparative reporting where you are comparing outcomes against HR strategies. Then next is recommendations as a technique. Please don't make a presentation without a recommendation, because you want the board to support you. You want the board to approve. You want the board to allocate resources, especially financial resources in systems. So that recommendation will be important. For example, today, many private organizations have migrated from manual HR recruitment and selection to ATS. ATS is automated tracking system or application tracking system, that you are able to track the application of employees from beginning to end, and that saves on time and cost. So in your recommendation, you will be requesting the board to invest in this new system. Then lastly is structured reports. And as I said, HR managers are very organized people, and we need to present our reports in a structured way, consisting of the cover page, which tells the board what you are about to present, the introduction, the findings or the body, the recommendations, conclusions, and action plans. In that structured manner, we are able, one, to create logical presentations, two, to create a flow so that we don't get confused by going back and forth, and that our case is well presented. How about reporting formats? You can report using written reports. That's the traditional way of doing this in Word document. Word. If not Word, maybe Excel. So you present your workforce findings related to recruitment, to training, to performance, to compensation, to retention or exits, call it turnover. So you can present that in the form of a Word document report, which is written. And that written report is presented to the board. You may or may not be there. But if the board has the time to read through the report, they can do that. But if they require you to go there and explain your report, please go there. And then PowerPoint slides, which is the most common, like the one I'm using now. So you summarize all your findings related to HR performance. PowerPoints are very important. However, you can make mistakes in PowerPoint presentations if, one, you congest your slides. Congesting means that you write paragraphs and paragraphs, which the board may not be available to read. So that clouds your presentation and makes it difficult. Because you understand your work, you should not make a presentation having so many paragraphs. Limit your presentation to 1 or 2 lines. The rest of them you can explain. Or if not, use visuals only in PowerPoint and explain the visuals. That will make your presentation better and more accurate. The use of dashboards, which I already have explained, where you are presenting data in real time, and you can demonstrate the board what is happening on the ground. That any updates that are done to the HR system or board dashboard can be reflected in real time, and the board can see that. That will make your presentation more interesting, more relevant, and attractive to the board, so that they pay attention, that things are happening in real time. And that's the beauty of using dashboards. Performance tables, these are templates that you can use to make comparisons among different sets of data. So you can have a template on recruitment, on training, on performance, showing different parameters that you are trying to measure. And that makes it easy for you to make a presentation to the board. Then lastly, briefing notes. And Magiri said that she's required to write board papers, which are short, precise, and relevant briefing notes, so that you can ease the work of the board, because they don't have the time to read all the notes, briefing notes. Before we invite questions, what are the best practices for reporting? Timeliness. And some of us have already indicated that even this program this morning has come at the most appropriate time, when they are about to make presentations to their boards. And by way of learning this or acquiring this knowledge, you will be prepared adequately to make presentations when you are called upon. So in timeliness, the reports must be presented during those meetings or before. The recommendation here is that you present them before the meetings, so that the board members may have time to look at them, and therefore they can make meaningful contribution during the actual presentations. Secondly is accuracy. And I've indicated 3 elements of accuracy. 1, factual, not based on rumors, factual, which should be data. Complete, that there is no missing information or data in your report. And 3, consistent, that your report should be free from inconsistency. With this kind of best practice, you are able to confidently make a presentation. Facts, facts, facts. Complete information, so that you don't give the board members room to question your report. Everything is presented and is available. Some of the questions that are asked may not be contained in our report, and then you start struggling. That give me time to look for this document. Give me time to make it complete. That will reflect negatively on us, if our reports are incomplete. Another one is transparency. Like I said, professionalism is a virtue. And part of this professionalism is presenting data in a transparent manner. Do not hide anything. And that is why we are called upon during our presentations to show our strengths, our weaknesses, our opportunities and threats, especially the weaknesses and threats. Don't fear presenting those weaknesses. That the moment you are open about them, the better for you, because some of the weaknesses may not related to what you do, but it could be systemic weakness. If it's a systemic weakness, then shout out, because that is the only way we can help our organizations. We do not grow by covering things up. So transparency is important. Tell the truth as it is, however hurtful it may be, but present the truth, transparency. But again, somebody might ask, Mwalimu, do we present all data in the spirit of transparency? No. You present data on a need basis. That is a need to know basis. You don't present sensitive information to lower level employees. But again, because we are talking about the board level, there's nothing to hide. But some of us may be tempted to say we cover our weaknesses so that the board does not know that we are not achieving this and that. Then relevance is about alignment. Allow me to say that any initiative implemented by HR must be aligned with the corporate objectives. And that alignment means that one, they fit into the strategic objectives, and two, they help to support. So two keywords, fit and support. That if it doesn't fit the objectives, then it becomes a square peg in a round hole. It doesn't fit, and therefore can be objected by the board. And when it supports, it means that it helps to improve or help to attain those strategic objectives. That unless we are aligned, we'll run the risk of achieving a strategic drift, which is not healthy for our organization, strategic drift. So relevance is about supporting the strategic objectives and fitting into that strategy. Then lastly is action-oriented. Action orientation. That our reports, and again, I can go back to the reports and align it with action. We mentioned several types of reports. Allow me to pick any one of them. That is risk assessment. That in your findings, you have identified risks. Risks associated with the HR processes, systems, and policies. So once you identify those risks, you look at the causes, the magnitude, and the effect. And then you prioritize which of these risks must be addressed first, especially those that have the highest likelihood and the highest impact. You prioritize them. And then when you prioritize them, you develop alternative action plans to mitigate them. Alternative action plans to mitigation strategies. So those mitigation strategies picked the action plan, to the action that we are seeing here, action orientation. For example, there is a risk of employees exiting the organization due to poor pay. That when employees leave, they leave with all their knowledge, their experience, and talent. We want to mitigate this risk. So what action do we need to take to mitigate the risk of employees leaving? The action could be enhancing the reward and the compensation system. That is one. Two, improving our leadership, if the reason for exit was leadership. Three, the working conditions. If the working conditions are unhealthy and unsafe, and the employee may opt to quit, and that becomes a risk. So what do we need to do? Audit our environment and ensure that it is safe and healthy. Those are action plans. But how do we make them actionable? One, we identify the risk. Two, we look at the risk owners. Three, we look at the action plans. Four, we look at the resources required. And five, we look at the timeline. So by creating such a template so that you action the recommendations will be a good thing for us when we are making presentations to the boards. So on that note, I will now invite questions so that we move to the next part, that is strategy execution planning. What we have just covered is reporting. And now I invite you to ask your questions or make a comment on reporting. The floor is ours.
Good morning again.
Good morning, Magiri. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I feel this training was supposed to come earlier because yesterday I had the board meeting.
Sorry,
And
Mhm.
yeah, this is the HR committee, not the main
Yes.
board. Yeah,
Yes.
so I was doing the presentation and the reporting. Our reporting format is written report. So I've been really struggling with why do we have to report in Word? So I was asking my CEO, and then he was telling me, "Have you ever interacted with those directors?" And once I went to the legal department, I've never known. I usually hear their voices. So those are old men. You can hear the voice. Those are old men. So our reporting format is written report. You can imagine the Word document. So I usually do the Word document from top there to whatever they want to. I mean, whatever is in the template. And so I'm relating very well with this training, Andrew, and thank you so much. So the other something I wanted to ask, now that I usually do the written report, given that our directors are baby boomers, once I switch, maybe I go to another organization, then I find we are supposed to do the dashboards, and I'm not even aware of how I'm supposed to report using at least the PowerPoint in the management meetings and the reports. Usually do the PowerPoint, so that one I'm okay.
Yeah.
And the performance tables and the briefing notes, those are in terms of the board papers. So do we have a training on dashboard reporting?
Yes, we do when we do data analytics for HR. And I will invite you to attend our training on HR data analytics and metrics.
Okay.
This is where we use dashboards to make presentations, either to our fellow managers or to the board. So what you do, if you have a dashboard, instead of you using a live dashboard, you can extract data from the dashboards and make your presentation. But for demonstration purposes, you can even use a live dashboard so that the board can see exactly what is going on in there. Magiri?
Okay, thank you so much. This is what I would want to go through.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I need this training. Thank you so much. I'll look out.
Mm. And again, I will invite you to look at our website, that is achrp.org, and visit our training calendar. You will be able to see HR analytics and metrics.
Okay.
Asante
Thank you.
sana. Anybody else with a question? Pauline, if you are there, please make your comment or ask a question or share an experience. Rosalind? Or probably there's somebody with a hand up. I can't see that. Joseph?
Mwalimu, I'm following.
Yes.
And this training is actually coming in timely. I have a presentation next week. So I would want to see how I can improve. I'm actually following. Thank you.
Thank you. This is Janet.
Yeah, this is Janet.
Thank you, Janet. And I'm happy that we are meeting this morning to share insights on how we can improve our presentations, and that Janet, Magiri, and others, you are able to make better presentations when you meet your boards soon. So if there is no other question or comment to be made, I now propose that we move to the third subtopic in our presentation. Okay. And that is strategic execution planning. As I indicated from the beginning, that is in my introduction, HR managers are sitting at the strategic table. And that is where they belong. Why should we belong there? It is because HR are the most important asset of the organization. Most important. You can have money. You can have the best technology in the world. You can have the state-of-the-art facilities, but without the HR component, that organization is a shell and cannot move anywhere. We need people. And because we need people, we need to position them at the top. And at the top means at the top of the organization where key decisions are made. I know some of us are struggling to be part of this strategic team because of the traditional way of treating HR. So you remain an operative and administrative expert without a contribution to the strategic planning and implementation. And for us to be at that table, we need to position ourselves by way of demonstrating that HR is the game changer in our organizations, that without them, we cannot go anywhere. So when it comes to planning, we should be at the apex of the planning structure so that we start and end with HR. In strategic execution, the assumption here is that we have formulated the strategies, we have analyzed the strategies in terms of viability, and now we are at that stage of implementing strategic execution. And in HR, we formulate strategies which are aligned to the corporate strategy, so that when we make our board presentations, we are talking matters strategy. And by nature, strategy are long-term. 2, they are mission and vision oriented. And 3, they are aligned with the corporate strategies. So as we make our presentations on how we are executing our strategies, we can demonstrate that as HR, we are contributing directly, and I use the word directly, deliberately, directly. We are contributing directly to the mission, vision, and the strategies of the organization. Without that alignment, we find ourselves struggling to make a case for HR existence. And that is why we are here this morning, to see how the execution of strategies may contribute to the success of the organization, and that we can demonstrate to the boards that the engine behind this success are the employees. And this is what we are about to look at. By way of introduction, we have the concept of strategic execution planning. That this is a process of translating HR strategies into implementable activities, which means that if it is a cost-cutting strategy from the top, cascaded down to us, so we translate that into a strategy in terms of workforce. So how do we cut strategy? How do we cut cost at the workforce level? There are many ways of cutting cost. 1, reduce waste. 2, reduce employees, if that is the direction. 3, freeze employment. 4, freeze training. And I am saddened that sometimes we stop training completely and expect employees to perform. I would expect that even if there is a freeze on training, in our budgets, we should allocate some funds for upskilling our employees. Otherwise, if we stop training completely, there's a possibility that we may not produce goods and services as expected. Why? Because our environment is in transition and our employees need to adapt to this transition. If not, then we stagnate and cannot grow, whether you are in public or private sector. So you translate corporate strategy into workforce strategies in those areas like recruitment, training, performance, including compensation. Somebody may ask, how do we cut cost in compensation? 1, we don't renew contracts of those people who are exiting, so that we don't have to pay somebody who comes in. So we don't renew contracts. Number 2, we bring in people at a lower salary. Any new person coming into the organization will earn a lower salary. And again, because this is a negotiation between the employer and the employee, that's another way of cost cutting. Another cost cutting strategy is retrenchment and layoff. So that is how you translate that as part of your strategic planning. Then goal and alignment. there should be a connection between those initiatives with the strategic objectives, just like I have demonstrated that one of your strategic objectives is cost cutting by 20% in the year 2027. And as HR, we must align our activities, recruitment aligned to cost cutting, training aligned to cost cutting, performance management aligned to cost cutting, compensation aligned to cost cutting. So everything must align. Thirdly, is the resource allocation. There is no organization in the world that has all the resources they require. Resources are scarce, and therefore we must utilize them optimally. And for that reason, as HR managers, we allocate resources to areas that are likely to create the highest impact. And in that way, you are likely to make a case to the board that by training, we create impact. By recruiting highly talented people, we create impact. By retaining talent, we create impact. So that when we prioritize in terms of resource allocation, we know which activities we should support or fund. And here we are talking about three types of resources. One, human resources in which we can invest. Two, physical resources which we can buy. And three, financial resources which we can acquire from our employer. If not employer, from your donors or sponsors. And then performance focus, that your strategy execution is focusing on performance. And again, allow me to repeat some of the indicators of performance. One, revenue generation. Two, profit making. Three, customer satisfaction. And four, market share. For public sector organizations, please don't think of market share, but think of how you can improve the organization so that they can achieve their mission and vision. So in strategic management, as HR, we look at performance so that we look at initiatives that are likely to contribute the highest in terms of outcomes. I want to believe that all of us are familiar with these three concepts. One, outputs. Two, outcomes. And three, impact. But if you have a question around there, I can explain it as we move on or during question time. Lastly is implementation focus, rather monitoring, that we must track our performance all the time. Because when we monitor, we are continuously collecting data. Data on progress. Progress of what? Progress of the strategies implemented. And that is why at some point we require status reports to demonstrate where we are in terms of strategy implementation. So when you track this progress, one, you are identifying achievements. Achievements, very key. Two, you are identifying deviations. Very key. Three, you are identifying emerging issues. And four, you are identifying environmental changes. So that when you get this information from monitoring, you are able to put in place interventions before things go very wrong. We don't want to wait until the end of a process. That is when we start going back to the processes. It must be continuous to ensure that we are on track. And that is the need for continuous monitoring. So monitor your strategies to ensure that they are implemented in the right way, at the right time, at the right place. Without which we may deviate and may be very difficult for us to reverse. Next are the components of strategic execution. That when we are implementing our strategies, what comes to mind? Number one is strategic objectives, which are derived from the corporate plan. And from the corporate plan, we look at the workforce priorities vis-a-vis the organizational objectives. And to align ourselves with the corporate strategies, we prepare a human resource plan. A human resource plan, which helps us to identify two key things. One, the demand for labor in line with the strategic objectives. Number two, the supply of labor in relation to corporate objectives. Demand is what we want in terms of numbers and quality. Supply is the number that we require or are likely to be available in the future. Available. Demand is what we want. Supply is what we have or likely to be available. So that from the demand and supply analysis, we identify gaps. If we have a shortage, then demand is high, we do staffing. And depending on the type of demand in numbers or demand in skills. If it is demand, a shortage in skills supply, we train. And for development is enhancing the current knowledge and skills of employees so that they can be functional in future. And for that reason, we prepare two things. One, career development, and two, succession plans from this development plan. Then other action plans derived from those gaps will include right sizing. If you have a bloated workforce, right sizing means that you ensure every department has the right number and the quality of people. Right sizing. If there is an excess in one department, we may have to do a redeployment. And then resource planning, where you identify areas of priority from the HR plan so that you budget for them. So you allocate human resources where they can create the greatest impact. And budget for that. Budgeting is about money. So when you budget on the basis of activities like training, like recruitment, like development, or like succession plans. And then performance indicators, that when you think of strategy execution, you need to develop KPIs that will tell you whether you are achieving anything, you are stagnating or declining. So those KPIs will give us direction and the milestones that have to be achieved before we celebrate our success. So the indicators. If it is recruitment and selection, you must identify your key performance indicators. One, timely, one of the indicators, timely filling of vacant positions. Two, cost reduction in recruitment. Three, enhanced onboarding satisfaction as a KPI. Or last, highest quality of new hires, quality of hire. So if these are your KPIs in recruitment, then during execution, you should be monitoring whether you are achieving these targets. Then lastly is risk management, where as HR managers, we identify those risks affecting the successful implementation of those plans. And there are many ways of identifying risks. One, you can use your own personal experience And I'm sure all of us are experienced, either from other organizations or current experience. 2, you can do brainstorming to identify risks. 3, you can use experts, either within or outside, to identify those risks. Or 3, you can do a SWOT analysis. SWOT. I believe all of us are aware of SWOT: strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Those threats and weaknesses may presuppose risk. And then from this SWOT matrix, you create, from this SWOT analysis, you create a SWOT matrix, which will tell you which action plans you need to take so that you can manage your risks. For example, when you create a SWOT matrix, on the horizontal axis, you have opportunities and threats. On the vertical axis, you have the strengths and weaknesses. So in the first cell, you may have opportunities and strengths. So you pursue growth strategies. Where you have threats and opportunities, there are risks, but there are opportunities. You may have to partner with other people as a way of risk management. Or where you are weak and the environment presents many threats, that is very risky. You cannot risk to recruit. You cannot risk to invest in training, because the moment you invest, you don't have the resources, you are weak. And externally, there are many threats. You don't go that direction. So there are many ways of identifying risks. And from identifying risks, you analyze the risks in terms of sources, magnitude, and impact, then prioritize, then develop a risk plan, showing the types of risks, the sources of risks, the effects of the risks, the risk of the owners of the risk, the action plans, and the resources required. I think I mentioned this earlier. And then there's the planning steps in terms of execution. I am sure these are things that we have done before. And here we are saying that we need to be consistent in our planning so that, one, we are able to predict the possible outcomes of our actions. 2, we are systematic in our presentation, and that the results are likely to be beneficial to us because this is based on facts or data. These are the steps that are involved in strategy execution. 1, goal definition, which we have said that as we undertake the HR initiatives, we are able to achieve our strategic objectives. That goal definition is very key because we don't want to deviate. And the more reason we should ensure that we are aligned at all times. Without clear definition, and it's definition by the way, is not about starting to identify, formulate objectives. No, you only need to revisit your strategic plan and identify those key objectives, and then develop your HR initiatives in line with those objectives. So you're not going to start afresh defining those objectives. Then from there, you can now develop clear initiatives like recruitment. What's the objective of that recruitment? Training, what's the objective? Performance appraisal and management, what is the objective? So that you are aligned. Then secondly is resource allocation. And here we are talking about 3 resources, which I mentioned earlier. People, that is human resource. Budget, that is financial resource. Tools, these are physical resources. Without these 3 resources, we cannot possibly implement anything. We can't. We need people, budget, and tools. And this is what you present to the board, that in terms of people and in line with our corporate objectives, we need more people. And we are conducting a budget, whether we are conducting recruitment, we are conducting training, and in line with our strategic objectives, we need a budget. And probably we have physical tools which are not up to date, like machines. And in line with our strategic objectives, we need to upgrade our tools and equipment, including software. So what do we need? We need a budget. And that is how you can successfully make a case to the board, especially when it comes to resource allocation. But the presumption here is that the board has allocated you resources, and therefore it's up to you as a HR manager to prudently utilize these resources and deploy them well. Then another step is action planning. So what do you need to do in relation to people, in relation to budget and tools? So you allocate duties and responsibilities to the people who qualify. Then after that action mapping, probably you develop a schedule in terms of recruitment, a program in terms of training, or a salary survey in terms of compensation and benefits. Then the timeline development, develop a schedule or a sequence of activities, which comes first, second, up to the last. And again, these timelines should be adequate enough so that we do not end up having what you call lags in our attainment of activities, or budget overruns or cost overruns. Because sometimes when activities are conducted over a long period of time, they attract extra cost. And that extra cost means that you have a cost overrun against your budget. Then lastly is an inbuilt monitoring mechanism that we are able to track or assess the attainment of our objectives, which we set out in step 1. And in this case, we establish clear metrics using dashboards and then reporting this to the relevant departments, including our boards. So ladies and gentlemen, that is what you call planning steps in line with execution. So we are executing our corporate strategies, rather cascading our corporate strategies to the HR level and implementing them. What is the role of HR in all this strategy execution? One is workforce planning, which I said is a forecast or an estimate of the number and the quality of people likely to be required in the future. And for you to do this, you need to analyze your demand and supply. And from that demand and supply, you identify gaps in terms of skills and numbers. And from those gaps, you formulate your HR action plans or strategies. Secondly, for you to execute a strategy successfully, you need qualified people, and that requires employee development. So as a HR manager, you coordinate all training programs through your staff. I'm sure many of us have an L&D department, a learning and development department, which is responsible for coordinating all training programs. And these programs must be aligned, as I have said, to strategic priorities. For you to be effective in employee development, as it were, and I believe it will continue to be, you need to develop or conduct a TNA, training needs analysis, so that you identify specific employees with specific needs, and therefore you tailor-make your training programs based on those needs. Tailor-make, so that you don't develop training programs that are so broad, and even in terms of measurement, you cannot put your finger on any results or benefit that you derive from it. So you tailor-make, and that is the way forward. I'm sure all of us are aware of the emerging issues in the HR area, and one of them in terms of training and development, tailor-making training programs so that they create impact. Performance management is a whole process of identifying objectives, setting targets, allocating resources, and then measuring the attainment of those targets over a period of time. And the performance appraisal is part of performance management, where performance management is broad, performance appraisal is specific, and it is conducted within a time frame. Performance management is continuous, never comes to an end. But performance appraisal comes to an end. Therefore, it is a component of performance management. So you monitor the performance of employees over a period of time, and also ensuring that there is a mechanism of identifying emerging issues through performance appraisals, risks, and take remedial measures in time, if not on time, not after, in time. Then once you have identified those performance parameters, as well as KPIs, you implement your policies. All areas of HR are governed or guided by policy. And HR, like recruitment and selection, there is a policy. Training, there is a policy. Reward and compensation, there is a policy. So ensure that you enforce your policy provisions. For example, what does your policy say about recruitment? It will give you a guideline that in recruitment and selection, you start with one, identifying a vacancy. 2, approval. 3, advertising. 4, long listing. 5, shortlisting. 6, interviewing. 7, selection. 8, onboarding. And 9, you hand over to the relevant department so that they can start probation period. If that is your policy guideline, you follow it because you want to implement your strategic plan in recruitment and selection. The same is done in performance management, in reward and compensation. Where the strategy does not help you to achieve the intended strategies, you may have to review it. And that policy review, you look at the process. If it's too long, you shorten it so that you are aligned. Otherwise, if your strategic plan means that, suggests that you cut costs within the next 1 year, and here is a recruitment and selection plan which is taking ages to complete, then you will not achieve your corporate strategy. So your HR policies must help to support the execution of your strategies, which are aligned to corporate strategy. Then lastly, the elephant in the room in most organizations is the management of change. As they argue, and this is derived from Karl Marx says that everything in the world changes except change. And for that reason, as HR managers, we must develop agile systems, agile policies, agile processes, and even an agile mind so that we can manage change. How? By adapting to these changes. So as HR managers, we take the lead in managing change. And how do we manage this? You identify the change. 2, analyze the change. 3, consult stakeholders, involve them and participate. 4, you develop an action plan for the change. 5, implement the change. And lastly, review the change. Those are key change management strategies. But most importantly, for you to avoid resistance to change, you need to do the following. 1, implement the change gradually or in phases. 2, train employees to accept the change or perform their work under a changed environment. 3, communicate the change so that employees are aware of the type of change. 2, their role in the change. And 3, the expectations. So we have a big role. And again, that takes us back to the changing role of HR. As I mentioned, one of the changing role is the strategic partner. Secondly is the change agent. Change, that is what we are discussing here, change. 3 is employee champion. Those are the emerging roles of HR. We have become employee champions, we have become strategic partners, and we have become change agents. So as a change agent, ensure that the change does not affect the organization negatively by way of preparing people for that change. Why do we talk about change in strategy execution? It is because when we formulate those plans, there are certain things that may have to change. For example, when you're talking about training, instead of conducting physical trainings, you use an LMS system, learning and management system, so that 1, you are able to track training in terms of completion rate using that system, or the programs that have been undertaken. Because your employees may not be able to use LMS, they may resist. So as a way of reducing resistance, you train them. Because the introduction of LMS is a change. And that's why we talk about change management in strategy. And there are many changes that we bring in our organizations, whether in policy, in systems, in processes, which affect the overall performance of the HR department. And then before we take a break, what are the challenges in strategy execution planning? Limited resources, particularly finances, are always a hindrance. Sometimes when we make proposals in the form of budget to the relevant authorities, they say that we don't have the money and therefore they slash our budgets. That slashing means that as HR managers, we need to make adjustments to the HR initiatives, which in effect may hinder the execution of the strategies. So again, in an environment like ours, yesterday but one, the cost of fuel went up, and our organizations may have to make adjustments in terms of our expenses, because it's, a higher cost of production means that we may have to reduce on of our operational expenses, not only in manufacturing, but also in service industries. And this reduction affects the overall performance of our departments. And that is related to limited resources. Number two is poor or inadequate communication. As it were, communication is meant to pass information accurately, precisely, and timely. Any communication which is not precise, which is not timely, which is not accurate, may lead to certain consequences. If the information communicated is poor or not clear, misunderstanding arises. And this is where conflicts come from. That you misunderstood something because of poor communication, and you have a conflict with the individual employees or the trade unions. And that will affect the implementation of your strategies. If I take us back to what we said about communication, and we said that communication is the lifeblood of the organization. Without it, we suffocate. So for us to make an impact, we need to communicate effectively. Secondly is employee resistance. As I alluded to change management, staff may oppose those changes or initiatives in our strategic plan. That opposition may hinder the execution of strategy. And one of the indicators of resistance, let me mention several, not one. Several indicators of resistance. One, lateness, that employees are coming late deliberately to avoid the change. Two is absenteeism. Employees being absent because there is a change in the organization, which they can't manage. Another indicator is turnover, employees exiting the organization because of a change. And there are many such indicators. At the shop floor level, organizations that are unionized, you may have industrial actions such as strikes, go-slows. Rather, strikes are exemplified by go-slows. A go-slow is where you report to work and you do not perform as expected. That's a sign of resistance. And then a sit-in, you report to work and then you do not work at all. Then picketing, this is where demonstrations come in. So those are indications of resistance. And we are well aware of the many forms of resistance we have witnessed in this country, where employees don't want to accept a change because they can't handle it, or because it was never communicated. So we need to take care of employee resistance by way of involving all the stakeholders. 2, training all the stakeholders. 3, communicating to all the stakeholders. And 4, implementing changes gradually. Those are change management strategies with respect to resistance. Weak leadership. Allow me to quote Achebe, who said that the trouble with Nigeria is simply and squarely a failure of leadership. If you juxtapose that to Kenya, you will see where leadership comes in. Leadership comes in the form of vision and mission articulation. 2, strategy. 3, support. And 4, inspiration. If your leaders don't support you, if your leaders are not visionary, if your leaders don't understand their mandate, the result is a disaster. So when you talk about strategy execution, the leadership of your organization may not be supportive. Supportive in terms of resource allocation, supportive in terms of policy formulation, supportive in terms of motivation. So if all these are missing, then your strategy collapses. Then lastly, monitoring. It is important for us to track the performance or the output of the strategies implemented so that we can identify emerging issues, can identify any challenges, can identify any changes, or any areas that need improvement. Without tracking, there are always delays, there are always costs, which may not augur well with our customers and even to the board. And the boards can ask very difficult questions when certain initiatives are being delayed. And like one of us mentioned, I think that was Jane or Mugiri, that there is a board committee on HR. And if there are certain initiatives that are not being implemented as scheduled, you may have a difficult time answering your questions to the board. How do we improve our strategic execution? Several ways. One, employee involvement. And I can expand that to stakeholder involvement so that we don't limit ourselves to employees, stakeholder involvement. And the stakeholders are the people who have an interest in the organization. This interest could be in the form of money. It could be in the form of strategy. It could be in the form of technology. So we want things to work because we have an interest in the organization. Then clear communication. Nothing replaces communication in an organization, even at family level. You need to have a communication system which is working, either through the use of emails, through the use of written reports, through the use of telephone conversations, through the use of scheduled meetings. So through these communications, we are able to, one, establish the progress of strategy execution, two, identify emerging issues, three, establish changes, and many others, because we are sharing. And from there, we can prioritize on any new developments because there is clear communication. Those of us in project management, clear communication is important. This could be in form of reporting. You present financial report, present performance reports, present progress reports, present status reports, you present risk reports. Those presentations, like I indicated earlier, are a form of communication which keeps the board up to speed so that they are aware of every step that you are taking. Training is another invaluable strategy of ensuring effective strategy execution. So you equip people with the relevant skills and knowledge, as well as attitudes. Attitude, because attitude can affect even the most and well-trained employee when it comes to execution. The moment people have a negative attitude, then the strategy collapses. So together with the skills and knowledge which are imparted during training, you need also to emphasize the need for attitude change. For example, you are introducing HR analytics in the way you do your work, and there are some people who may not be able to do this. Why? Because they have an attitude that analytics involves maths, which they didn't interact with during their formative days of education. And therefore, that attitude needs to be changed. Then performance reviews, again, continuous monitoring will tell us our progress and areas that need improvement. Leadership support at our level, HR managers are leaders, and therefore you must support those HR initiatives. When an employee is stuck, do not reprimand them, help them improve. Because performance management focuses on improvement. It's not a disciplinary process. If somebody does not perform, enable them to improve by way of giving them adequate support. And this support can be in terms of counseling, can be in terms of resources, and it can be in terms of training. So we are here to grow our organization and make them better. And that is what we need to do in order to improve our strategy execution. Before we go to the last part of our training this morning, again, I will invite us to share our experiences or give more insights to what we have just covered, and that is strategy execution. Ask your question, make your comment, share your experience. Thank you. Anybody to go first? Jane, I can see you.
Yes, thank you so much, Marim. We are getting quite a lot, and just a comment.
Yes.
Most of the management sometimes they avail the reports to the board very late, and they say we are trying to manage the board so that we are not grilled. I think from this, you understand that the board will also guide you, and the board is not there to harass you, but to support you to be able to implement the strategic goals of the organization. And we are all working towards one common goal. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jane. Yes, it is true that some organizations, especially through the CEO, they want to manage the board. There is a risk to that. That yes, you may manage them for today. When things go wrong tomorrow, where will you run to? And that is why we need to promote the element of transparency in reporting. That much as we have our weaknesses in the performance of our functions, we need their support so that we move together as a team. And in any case, the board is not there to harass anybody, like Jane has mentioned. The board is there to ensure that the organization is on track by way of executing their fiduciary functions. Fiduciary. So when you interact effectively with the board, you work as a team, your organization is likely to be more successful than when some part of the organization is managing the board. So thank you, Janet, for your, rather Jen, for your insight and encouragement that we work together as a team. Anybody else with a question or a comment? Judith, if you are there, please go ahead. Karen San, I've not heard your voice. If you are there, please go ahead.
Mwalimu, have been following keenly, and
Yes.
the presentation is quite insightful. Personally, I have worked closely with the board for a couple of years.
Yes.
So the overall lesson has been very resourceful, and thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, and I believe you are you are picking some insights as well as takeaways that you can use to improve your board presentations. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Mweni, Alice, and lastly, Gloria, if you are there, please go ahead with your question. Right. We now move to the last part of our presentation this morning, and that is simulation. As I said, the simulation is a kind of rehearsal that we make before we go to the board to make our actual presentation. And it is important for us to do a simulation. One, to ensure that we have covered all the areas of interest that the board may require. Two, we create confidence in ourselves when we are making this presentation. If you go back to what we said earlier on about effective presentation, confidence came up as the first point. That when you are confident in your presentation, people will trust you. People will relate with you. And as an individual, you can make a good case for yourself. And you can create that confidence through simulation. Thirdly, simulation affords us the opportunity to prepare adequately for any questions that may arise. You can do a simulation with a fellow manager in your organization that have this board meeting and I'm required to present this and that. May I show you what I have before I go there? So if you are working in a team environment, somebody should be able to show you, especially those who have been there. So that simulation helps you to prepare the possible questions and concerns that may arise during the board meeting. And to help us understand what it takes for us to simulate, we look at this introduction, and it involves preparing executives for actual board reporting. Preparing executives. There are two ways of doing this. One, you prepare at your own level together with somebody else. Or two, because you have your CEO who reports to the board, you can work closely with the CEO to prepare for these presentations. So that preparation is important because it gives you a feel of what an actual board presentation looks like. So the CEO, the senior managers, together with the HR managers, you can work together to prepare yourself. You do a simulation so that you don't go to the board, mix yourself, confuse yourself, and present inconsistencies, you are likely to find it very rough when the board asks those hard questions for which you are not prepared. Secondly, is the purpose of simulation. Three things: communication, confidence, and decisions. That through this simulation, you are able to articulate your issues by way of communication. And then through this presentation, simulation, you develop confidence. And then lastly, you can make a good decision based on your presentation. The choices we make. You can make good choices or bad choices depending on the data that we have. So if you don't have the data, please review your data and ensure that the data is accurate so that it informs your decision. Stakeholder influence. There are so many people who have an interest. These are the stakeholders, starting with the immediate boss, especially HR managers. You could be reporting to a director or directly to the CEO. That's a stakeholder. Other managers are stakeholders. So during simulations, stakeholders get to know what we are doing as HR and possibly how we can improve when making presentations. Another one is realistic scenarios, that a simulation is as close as possible to the real presentation. So that practical exposure helps us to prepare adequately and also present data and information in a realistic manner. Then lastly is performance feedback. Is you evaluate your strengths, weaknesses, without forgetting opportunities and threats, because we talk of risks. A simulation will help to highlight our internal strengths and weaknesses, especially when it comes to reporting. So what is this that we can report that can show our strength? What is this that can also be a weakness? What do you need to include in your simulation? One, the agenda. That when you are called to the board has an agenda to discuss certain issues related to HR. So outline your simulation based on the topics that the board is interested in. And this will form your discussion points during the board meeting. HR performance data is another component which looks at the level of performance of each staff, if there is a need for them to look at the staff performance. Visual aids, we talked about dashboards, we talked about pie charts, line graphs, or histograms as tools for presentation. You should ensure that they are adequately prepared, they are clear, and they show the data that they are supposed to. So if you are making a presentation either through a Word document or through a PowerPoint, endeavor to use visuals. Visuals are easier to interpret, easier to understand, and save on time. And then the other component of simulation is questioning. The members of the simulation can ask questions. Ask questions related to what you have presented, so that in case a similar question is asked in the board, you are able to answer it adequately. And in some cases, the board members ask very tough questions or ask questions that you didn't prepare for. And that way, that kind of questions might be startling or confusing if you are not adequately prepared. The approach to simulation is to take a 3D approach to all your presentations, 3D. By 3D, I mean 3-dimension. That whatever data you are presenting to the board, you look at it from all sides, from the top, from the side, from the bottom. That if anybody asks a question, you are already prepared. And the people to help you in this simulation are your fellow managers. And if you are working as a team, they should be able to help you out. Or if not, then you can do it yourself. If you do the 3D dimension, you should be able to be prepared. Time management, how long will your presentation take? The board can tell you you have 5 minutes to make your presentation, and you have a 40-page document. You will be stuck. As a contingency measure, you may have details of your presentation, but prepare a summary that in case there is no time, you are given 5 minutes. Those of us in marketing know what they call elevator pitching. Elevator pitching. That if you have a CEO of an organization in a lift and you feel like you can make a presentation to him to persuade him to buy your product, probably is going to first floor or second floor. The communication must be quick, must be smart. Quick and smart. And that can only be done if you have a summary, an executive summary, so that you can reduce on time. Even if you don't have a summary, ensure that during simulation, you present your data or information within the specified period of time. Usually during those presentations, they tell you that we have a board meeting from 9 to 11. And within that time, you should be able to make a presentation, manage your time well by reducing or avoiding unnecessary data, by developing an executive summary, and also using summary charts, diagrams, or figures. Next is preparing for the board presentation. Preparation, very important. You have done your simulation. Now it is time to prepare to go to that room. I know it can be hot. Sitting on that hot seat can be frightening. But if you are adequately prepared, you should not sweat at all, but you should present your work in a confident, precise, and effective manner. What preparations do you need? Understanding of your audience in terms of interests, concerns, and priorities. Interests. There are personal interests. Unfortunately, in some boards, there are personal interests. 2, there are financial interests. 3, there are strategic interests. So those interests must be catered for as you prepare for your presentation. Concerns are issues that need to be clarified or addressed. Probably the board is concerned about the cost of staffing. So when you make your presentation, know that staffing is one of the key aspects and therefore you address it. Strategic priorities is the mandate and the strategic objectives. So your presentation must address those strategic priorities. Then in terms of organization, your content must be structured well, starting with the introduction, findings, and recommendations. Like Mugiri said, they have a template which they have been using. If you have a template, it's okay, but still, it should be well structured, having all those key components. Up to action plan. 3, data is invaluable. Ensure that your presentation is supported with or by data. Data, data, and data. Without this data, it becomes difficult to explain certain outputs, outcomes, and impact. So you need to present your data using visuals, or if not visuals, you can use other methods like tables. Then lastly, not lastly, second last, practice delivery, that is simulation. Rehearse your presentation. Because rehearsal makes you familiar with your content and familiar with the interests, concerns, and priorities of the board. And then lastly, anticipate questions. As you may already have realized, I always anticipate questions from the participants. And that is why I ask all of us to ask questions so that you can prepare responses. As we close, what are the common challenges in presentations? 1, anxiety, that's lack of confidence. 2, information overload. Again, we said something to do with communication can impact negatively on your presentation. Don't present excessive details, which may not be required by the board. It can be confusing. Poor preparation, you don't rehearse, it becomes a challenge. So you rehearse your work, read it. If it is a Word document, if it is a PowerPoint, read your presentation in and out. If need be, 3, 4 times, so that whichever angle the question comes, you already understand your document. And if there are any references to be made, you have materials to cross-reference. So preparation is a challenge. Difficult questions, sometimes from the board members, can also be a challenge. And again, please don't attempt to answer a question that you are not sure about. Never attempt, because you run the risk of lying. If not lying, having to be asked for support documents, which you don't have. If there is any difficult question that you have been asked and you don't have an answer, then excuse yourself and request the board to allow you time so that you can look at it. In any case, the board is not going to eat you up. They are there to support you. Then lastly, technical problems related to your equipment. Probably your dashboard is not working because it is internet-based. You end up not presenting. There's no internet, you end up not presenting. Power goes off, and I pray the power does not go off on any of us. The training ends if power goes off and you don't have a backup. And then there are other technical issues which may arise during presentation, and that become a challenge. What are the benefits of board presentations so that we can close? Number 1 is confidence building, that by you presenting to the board all the facts, all the information, you create a case for yourself and the board can say you are doing a good job, continue. Otherwise, if you fumble in your presentation, they will tell you you have a lot to work on. So be confident when you go there, and the confidence arises from 1, adequate preparation, 2, simulations, and 3, research. Please ensure that you do research. Communication improvement, that through these presentations, you can improve your communication. Error identification, you can detect errors during those simulations. It can support your decision. And lastly, the audience engagement. Like I said, one of the best practices in board presentation, please engage your audience. Ask them for questions, clarifications, or any materials that they may need. You tell them that you will be glad to provide them. So let the board participate, involve them from an early stage, and consult them. These boards are always available to us. You can consult depending on the committee that you belong to. So on that note, ladies and gentlemen, we come to the end of our presentation. And for the last time now, I ask if there is anybody with a question or a comment or something to share, please go ahead so that we can close. Anybody with a question, comment to make?
William, so much.
Yes.
I think the reason why I'm giving feedback and my comment is because I'm just excited.
Yes.
Yeah, how this training has come through, and
Yes.
I think I've had a lady who was the last one to respond to the last the last part. I don't know whether it's Judy, the one who has said she has been interacting with the board. She need to mentor me.
Yes.
Now that this is the 4th time, and like yesterday I told you we had the committee, the HR committee board, and my CEO did not join the meeting, and he had told me categorically, today I'm not joining. You're the one to answer all the questions.
Yes.
Now the butterflies were inside my stomach.
Yes.
But the components of board presentation simulation, you have really articulated it very well. And there's that question handling. There's the one board paper, it was discussed by everyone, including the regional director, and they approved so that I can circulate and now discuss it during the meeting yesterday.
Yes.
One question came. I was like, now how am I going to answer this? Yeah, it's comparison of the cost of whatever I wanted them to approve. But I actually gave an answer because I thought that is a right answer in the absence of my CEO.
Yes.
And I got the approval. So I'm learning the hard way. Thank you that the training came. And I will keep on revising my notes, and I will look for a few, like, I don't know whether it's Judy. Please, she can let me know whether she's got Judy.
Yes.
Thank you.
You are welcome, Mugiri. Thank you very much. And from ACHRP, we are happy that this training has given you many insights that you are likely to use for purposes of reporting going forward. I'm really excited. I'm excited that you benefited. Janet, you have your hand up. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Mwalimu. Actually, this is a continuous. I've interacted with the board like in most of my work, but the challenge, as what you've mentioned, could be like when you're on the spot, on something that you had not anticipated. Probably you've prepared your presentation, and of course it was aligned to something. And sometimes the CEO is there and they will tell you, no, HR, respond. And you know, sometimes I say like it's a political question, because probably they want to measure you to see how you react in front of the CEO. So I'm just learning from you, like how to respond and all that, because sometimes, as you said, there are political interests, and sometimes they are interested in the board. So when they ask questions, you also need to know the kind of probably the interest they have for that particular meeting. It could be about recruitment, or you're talking of performance and somebody has some interest in it.
Yes.
So I think this training is very insightful for me. I really appreciate it. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Janet. And we are happy that this training has met your expectations. And we look forward to seeing you again another time. Anybody else before we close? Fidel, I can see
yes,
you. Yes, Fidel, go ahead.
Sorry.
Yes, Fidel.
Actually, I'm David Kirui. I joined using
you are not Fidel. Okay, go ahead, David.
My son's name. I'm not Fidel. I'm David Kirui. Yeah.
Okay.
So I really want to appreciate you, Mwalimu, for that presentation. Especially myself, I sit on some circumstances places me to sit sometimes in the as a board member.
Yeah.
And at some circumstances, I'm also doing secretariat.
Yes.
So I have really benefited a lot from the presentation, especially the connection between strategic management and the HR practices that are related to the board presentations.
Yes.
I have particularly been very keen in terms of the presentations, the KPI.
Go ahead.
And I've also part before the day of presentation. So thank you very much, Mwalimu.
Yes.
We really appreciate your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, David. We really appreciate. And if there is any other person who has a comment or a question to make, please go ahead so that we can close.
Hello, Mr. Andrew.
Yes, hello. How are you? Who am I speaking to?
Yes, speaking to Cyril.
Cyril, yes. Go ahead, Cyril.
Mwalimu, thank you for the insights that I've been able to get through this presentation.
Yes.
Having that I'm still within the entry level within HR, taking up the learning skills and make more practice as I get there. So
yes,
I admire that I'll be getting there with much more knowledge.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Cyril. Yes, at SCHRP, we empower people, like I said, so that we can grow in our profession. At the entry level, there's a lot that you have learned, and I'm sure there's a lot that you will learn going forward. These are baby steps for you to get to that high level to make those board presentations. I wish you well, and the sky is not even the limit. Cyril?
Thank you, Mr. Andrew.
Asante. So on that note, ladies and gentlemen, allow me to say thank you very much for your participation. Thank you for your time. Thank you for the questions. And I believe we have learned. This is not the end of learning. We have other programs that we are running. Please visit our website, that is schrp.org. You will be able to see many of our programs, and please register, and we look forward to seeing you. For now, thank you. Have a good weekend, and may God bless you.
Thank you, William.
Thank you.
Nice weekend. Thank you.
Thank you.